Library District Board of Trustees. It is 7:01 and we are now in session. We are going to make a couple of minor changes to the order of the agenda tonight. We're going to move item 3 and 4 down to after item number 7. And so those of you following along can make a note of that. And so with that, we will go right into the public comment section of the agenda tonight. Are there anybody signed up for a public comment? Okay. We do welcome public comments and are happy to have feedback for multiple ways to submit those comments, either via a web form on our webpage, an email, or in person at our meeting tonight. We're happy to have Brian Carter signed up for a public comment tonight. Mr. Carter, you have up to 3 minutes, please.
Reading library policy number 11, it looks like there is on the agenda a code of conduct. I don't know if this necessarily will be discussed. This topic has been discussed in prior meetings. The policy 11 reads, possession of a firearm or deadly weapon as defined by Idaho Code. Library property is prohibited unless expressly permitted by law. What is of key focus here is Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Sections 1, 10, 11, and 21. Foremost, that there is even the wording of possession of a firearm, even listed in the Meridian Free Library District policy is where the issue starts. Idaho Code 183302, subsection 2, that political subdivisions, as such the Meridian Free Library District is, with the election of its boards, they're unequivocally barred from having any such public policy with the word possession in conjunction with the terms firearms or firearm. And it is wrong for the MFLD Board of the Directors to imply that there is to be some level of legal capacity, let alone legal authorization to interpret Idaho Constitution or Idaho Code as to the right to bear arms. It is not the lawful jurisdiction of the MLD employee to interpret Idaho Constitution or Idaho Code or base decisions on their or someone's unfounded self-ascribed fears. Further, that this policy is listed under unacceptable behaviors implies that, quote, possession of a firearm of itself is somehow unacceptable behavior that somehow needs to be reported. That there's but a singular of firearm or singular of weapon. Does that mean you actually want your citizens to be in true compliance with the policy as expressly and written, that you require of we the people to be in possession of firearms in plural or deadly weapons in plural? Anybody that would come in like that, I would chat with them about that, but that's certainly their choice. I would recommend that this would be a employee policy. Should members of the public have inquiry as to the constitutional right of a person to that of securing safety, that's section 1 of our Constitution, enjoying and defending life and liberty, freedom of speech, the right to assembly, and the right to bear arms, that the MLD Board of Directors would only but encourage the library staff to encourage members of the public to engage in resources the library offers, to research these topics, or to consult them. Anything else in the policy otherwise says we have to do something because it's listed under unacceptable policies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That brings us to new item number 2 on the agenda, revised order item number 2 on the agenda, the consent agenda. The consent agenda covers items that may be unrelated in nature but are considered to be routine and without requiring a lot of discussion. However, board members always have the option, should they choose to do so, to remove individual items from the consent agenda. Otherwise, we would consider these items in one motion, and I would then entertain a motion. Is there any question about items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please, Laura.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next up is new item, revised order item number 4, the financial report. These reports were included in our packets for review prior to the meeting, and we would now like to hear a few words about those and answer any questions from trustees that may be there.
Trustees, routine month. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
I have a couple questions. From the bill listing, a couple of vendors that I didn't recognize that I'm sure are routine, but relatively high dollar amounts. EBSCO Industries, Library Aware for $12,000. This was in July.
Library Aware is the marketing platform that we use for newsletters and other marketing outreach efforts that are digital in nature.
Is that a year subscription?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. The other one was a credit card, $2,700 or $2,300 for Soundtrack Your Brand.
Soundtrack Your Brand is our legal compliant way of being able to play copyrighted music in our programs, but also in our spaces, such as Unbound and Orchard Park, where to balance out some of the quietness of being able to not overhear a conversation across the building that a group of students is having, or if someone is working in a business group, being able to help mitigate sound pollution by playing soft music over the top. And the only way to do that in a compliant way is to have a copyrighted license to do such.
And again, is that a year subscription
Yes.
just for that location? For
I believe that we now have it in a single subscription that has multiple branch options to it.
Thank you. Additional questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I would like to clarify. Sorry, every brand or every location has its own license for Soundtrack Your Brand. So
Okay, and is each of the licenses the $2,300?
I believe so. I would have to double check. Try to get an update. Yes, that is.
Okay, your staff is on the ball. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Laura, or Destiny, yes.
I approve July financial reports and disbursement approvals. I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the July financials. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to revised agenda item number 5, the staff presentation concerning the Pinnacle branch. Exciting news ahead.
All right. Thank you, trustees. We have Dusty and Jenny, two of our managers. Dusty is the branch manager at Pinnacle, and she was formerly the branch manager. To give us an update of where we're at.
Hey, I wanted to kind of start just to give a the collection, the community, and then if you have any questions. But for those that may not have been here as long, I wasn't here that long. In 2015, we had entered the Hill partnership with YMCA, West Ada School District, St. Luke's, and City of Meridian Parks and Rec. The plan was to build a new public library that would also serve as that school library for Hillsdale Elementary. It was supposed to be the full service South branch, and it would replace that Silverstone branch that was housed in the leased business center. It was never meant to be a full-time ongoing branch, even though 15 years isn't quite temporary, but the plan was that it would be a temporary location. In 2015, we had failed to pass a bond to build the two new libraries, that North and South branch. 2016, we failed to pass a bond a second time. And then 2018, we opened Tiny Library in order to kind of continue that Hill partnership while we figured out what was our next steps. 2019, we had passed that plant facilities levy that has allowed us to do all of these capital projects that we've been doing over the last few years. So building 2 new full service libraries, technology and business library, and then remodeling the existing Cherry Lane. In that time delay from the failed bonds to passing the levy, the Y needed to build more of their facility. They expanded their facility. And so we had to rethink what we were doing on the south side. So 2021, we were approached by Brighton Corporation for that private partnership that we entered into for that new Pinnacle community. And everybody has driven down there. It's pretty, it's a lot of fields and a brand new development. It was a really, really great partnership. They donated the land and then funded the full construction of the new library with the agreement that we would purchase the completed building. That allowed us to move very quickly in this project. Construction began in October of 2023 with our groundbreaking. So some of the features, it is just under 12,000 square feet. We really wanted to design it to be your home away from home. Some of the key design elements throughout Pinnacle is flexible spaces, because even though it's about 2.5 times the size of Silverstone, it's still quite a bit smaller than Orchard Park. And so we needed to kind of rethink how we use that space and how we utilize it to the best that we could. We used a lot of warm colors and textures to kind of bring your home into the space. We wanted to create that unique space that's more than just transactional, which is a lot of what we've had at Silverstone with holds pickup, in and out, not any space for programming. Staff have played a huge role in providing feedback on the design elements and the floor plan and the whole process in between. And one of the examples was with our desk setup. They had provided the feedback that they really wanted an escape route, whether it was a medical emergency or they needed to ask other staff for help, rather than being in the center of the library. And so that was one of the things that we put into place. The flexible children's area opens out into the outdoor patio space, which is equipped with outdoor seating, interactives, all funded by the World Bank and the Library Foundation. Dedicated teen space that allows us to serve all of the youth in that community as it grows. And I think that's one of the really exciting things about it, is because it's such a new community, we'll be able to see the youth growing up, going to story times, going to our STEM programs, and then hanging out in the teen space. So they'll be able to grow with us. And that teen space was generously funded by the Library Foundation and Idaho Gives campaign. The adult lounge and large study rooms, which is a huge growth part from what Silverstone had. Multiple study rooms that are large enough for 4 people in each. Gives a lot of options for working from home, teleconferencing, vibe boards, smart boards, those kind of things. And then the meeting room program space, that was one of the spaces that we really had to think about how we could utilize that space. So we put in a divider wall that can transition it from 2 separate rooms or 1 large room to really make it a versatile meeting space. 24/7 holds pickup, just like with Orchard Park. We carried that over. We also carried over the wellness room that is at Orchard Park with a variety of health and sensory kits. And then lots of open and collaborative space for the community. Dedicated areas for staff to work and collaborate, which is also a huge upgrade from what Silverstone had. 2 private offices for the branch leadership team, large break room for staff, which also does not serve as for staff that we had at Silverstone. And then the automated sorter, which we're all having to get used to because we were doing everything manually. Do you want to start with Shelby?
Yeah.
That's the last one.
Although I think, Dusty, I'm a little surprised that your features slide didn't include the staff bathroom, because I've heard a lot of excitement about having
Our own
a bathroom that is just for staff and maybe doesn't have kids poking their head under the door. So yeah, we have plenty of shelving at the new location. This shelving is actually more linear feet than Orchard Park has, even though it's in a smaller square footage of space. And it is more than double what Silverstone was working with. So we have a lot of room to grow and a lot of room to bring over the books that we already had. So you can see that we brought some stuff over. This photo down here is the Easy Readers. I took that picture today because the books are on the shelves. But on the graph, you'll look at the blue part is how many books we had already from Silverstone, and the green part is what we've added on top. And I divided that into adult, teen, and youth categories. One thing that's a little misleading about the blue chunks is that the blue chunks represent a heavily edited collection. So a year ago, Silverstone's collection was bigger than it was a month ago, because we needed to do some substantial weeding. I think you've been seeing that in reports coming out for the past year. And one of the tests that we did was a touch weed of all the items, where we did kind of an ew test, where does it make you go ew? Does it have a stain that you can't recognize? Did a pages falling out? Is there a reason that we don't want this book? So we ended up with a lot of books that left the collection and that were also incidentally not in good enough shape to go to the friend sale, which often happens. So this is the same as Silverstone. You can see the proportions stay pretty similar, and that the bulk of the collection items are for youth and teens, just like Silverstone had. So for the next slide, I wanted to show a little bit more of what's on the shelf. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so these numbers I pulled today mostly. You can see all the branches listed there, including Silverstone and Pinnacle both. So the Silverstone numbers are from August, the Pinnacle numbers are from today, and the district total is everything but doesn't include both Silverstone and Pinnacle. That would be double dipping. But you can see that the Pinnacle collection is about 30,000 items. This is 50% bigger than it was Silverstone, so we added about 10,000 more items. That actually, we subtracted probably about that many items over the past year as well. Square footage wise, it's similar to Orchard Park in that there's fewer books there, but we do have plenty of shelves so that we know that there's a lot of space to grow the collection as well. And I wanted to, as you'll see if you come into our grand opening, or as you'll see if you come and visit the branch, the shelves are really, really packed right now. But you can see on the checked out column that only about 5% of the collection is checked out at the moment. We tend to average more like a third. Down at the bottom, the district total that I have listed is 25% as of today. But again, that's including a branch that's mostly checked in. We intentionally tried to get as many books checked in as possible so that we could do that ew test that I was talking about, so we could make sure our collection was looking good and we could repurchase items that needed to be removed. So I wanted to share some collection highlights because we didn't just, buy books willy-nilly. I've got a really great department of, there's core 6 people who did most of the work getting the books on the shelves at Orchard Park, and then I joined the team last year to help them get the Pinnacle branch going as well. And so I wanted to share some of the choices that we all together made. First of all, the large print collection was able to grow quite a bit. So Silverstone just didn't have the space for a big large print collection. So that collection, as of right now, has about doubled in size and is adult fiction and nonfiction items. We also were able to add youth read-along books. These collections were added in Orchard Park and Cherry Lane this year, but Silverstone hadn't had it before. So Pinnacle is opening with the read-along book collection. There's a zoom in picture there of the controls where you can have the book read to you. And I brought one with me as well so that you can follow. To use this opportunity to move the nonfiction books out of the adult nonfiction collection. So the teen nonfiction in this location and at Orchard Park and at Silverstone previously were shelved all together, teen books and adult books and nonfiction together. And best is to have it available where the teens are. So they'll browse it more if it's in their area. They're more likely to be able to find topics such as books about going to college if they are in a place with other books that they're looking for and not hidden away with the cookbooks and the gardening and things that are less high interest for teens. So we did this at Pinnacle first, and we plan to make that shelving change at the other locations this year. The graphic novels one is really exciting because I can say we grew the collection by more than 1,000%, more like 1,100% actually. Silverstone, again, just didn't have the space to support its own graphic novel collection. So this is a photo of the adult graphic novel collection that includes some really fun stuff like graphic novel versions of classics like The Great Gatsby, but the youth collection grew quite a bit as well. We also found out both from patron or surveys from the area and also talking to staff that there was interest in making sure we had classics represented in our collection. So classic is one of those words that means different things to different people and can be defined in all kinds of ways. But we did make an effort to make sure that what we were purchasing included older titles, titles that have been enjoyed for decades, award winners, things like that. This one's exciting too. So it shows one of the things that we learned from opening the Orchard Park branch. We opened with a beautiful display and they were all checked out in about a week and a half. So made sure to get as many board books as we could in the space. It's increased by 170%, but I also wanted to highlight there to show that how many are checked out. I talked about it on the other slide about how about 25% of the collection is checked out right now. That's the average. If you go collection by collection, you're going to see some differences. In the board books at Orchard Park, 86% of that collection is out in people's homes and hands, and at Cherry Lane, 70% is. So even though we have about 900 board books in Pinnacle right now, and we're looking at each other going, where do we put them all? We know that they'll be being read soon by patrons. And then last, I wanted to finish off with just some of the numbers of the increases in different collections. You can see there's some really big swings here in different ways, but I wanted to talk about how collection development isn't just buying more and more books. You have to think about collections in small chunks. So overall, the collection increased about 51%, but there's some highlights here. Like I said, the graphic novel, adult graphic novel increased quite a bit. Youth graphic novel increased quite a bit as well. Teen already was a place where we were putting a lot of graphic novel efforts, so that increase was more proportional with the average. Some other things I wanted to talk about while we're here is that large print that nearly doubled, the teen nonfiction that we made an effort since we were pulling out that collection to make it a more well-rounded collection, and we'll continue to do that over the next year. And then the other number you might notice being pretty different is the youth picture books collection. It says it's an increase of 17.2%, but that's a little bit misleading because last spring before we weeded a ton of picture books, and the collection librarian and the branch librarian really were like, we're going to need picture books for summer reading, aren't we? So we went ahead and we bought a bunch of the books 6 months ago that aren't reflected in the brand new in storage increase to Pinnacle. I think that was all my collection stuff. I'll pass back to you.
All right, so a little bit about the community that we've placed this library in. They're going to have an amphitheater just across the way outside the main doors of Pinnacle that we'll have access to as well. There's a cafe restaurant adjoining us that will bring in a lot of activity. There's going to be medical offices, retail shops, courtyard for community events, all of those great things. The South Meridian Market is already underway this year. It's small, but it's making some headway. And they're actually going to be there for our grand opening. They've changed because of the weather, they had to cancel it. And so September 30th for our grand opening, they're going to be set up that evening just outside of Pinnacle to help bring in more crowds. Walking and biking pathways all throughout, adjoining the Discovery Park and Gym Prep South and the new fire station. So it is a rapidly growing area that is well positioned for more growth. So some of our milestones, Silverstone closed August 31st. We had our transfer of ownership on September 12th. And then September 13th was our first day to move any materials into the building. It has been a mad sprint since then. And we're going to have our City of Stories event September 26th. So it's a small time frame, but I think we're about 95% done with setting up the building now. So staff have done an incredible job getting it all set up. Our ribbon cutting is 30th, and we are going to have a special story time and then that South Meridian Market. And then some of the feedback that we heard with Orchard, because it was a very different project, that they didn't start programs right away, and there were a lot of public that were upset about that. And so my staff listened. They were already in place. They were trained. We didn't have to do any of that heavy recruitment. So programs are beginning October 1st. And that first week, we have 17 programs planned. So in the middle of all of the moving, they've also been planning all the programs for the first open week. So just some highlights, and you can just skip through these as you want. Some highlights of our move. We labeled a lot of things and set up, Nick helped us to set up the vibe boards to direct people on which way to go with things. Again, it was a lot of work to get all of this stuff in, but everyone is smiling, and we're still smiling at the end. So I think staff are just super excited to get it all set up. Moving plants in, and we've had help from all of the locations, admin, from Jenny. We could not do this without her. She is a mad woman with the sorter and getting all those best. So again, thank you to Brighton, LKB, CM Company. Aero Specialties, they donated all of our boxes and moving supplies, which is very generous. The foundation, and then the staff, and in particular, because I said, that the programmers have been planning programs and doing all of this. They've worked really hard, but all of our LAs and pages have really stepped up and done a huge brunt of the work of getting all of this set up. So.
Thank you. I just want to add, these two have been phenomenal. They took on this project. They've been mapping out how to do the move. They got everything set up. They were completely ready to do the move as soon as we signed the paperwork. And on Friday, we had the correctional industries come in and move everything from Silverstone. They had planned out exactly what needed to be taken, and they told everybody where to take it and then what to do. It was great. I got to go help, and I didn't have unboxed and moved where they told me to move things, and it was one of my they had thought of everything, and they did a phenomenal job, them and their teams, not just day of, as they were saying, ordering 25,000 additional items to go into the collection, being able to keep Silverstone serving patrons all to transition quickly and move everything over to Pinnacle. I just want to commend these two and their teams for the phenomenal job that they did in getting this branch up and running, and all the planning that went into making this possible. So.
Dusty and Jenny, thank you. Any questions or comments?
Just to say thank you so much for your hard work, and I'm excited to see Pinnacle. I haven't been there yet, so very excited for that. And you guys, kudos. Good job.
I'd also like to say thank you and tell you how much I appreciate the thoughtfulness that goes into collection development. I love the idea of the read-along youth books. Those are fabulous for lots of different reasons. But to have a resource like that in our libraries is exciting. Thank you.
How many trucks did it take to move that many books?
So it was a very large truck, and they did 2 trips from Silverstone and then 1 to our storage unit for all of the new stuff.
Okay.
So 3 loads.
Nice. And I think one of you two told me at the staff picnic about using the sorter to pre-sort the items. Is that,
We were talking about the sorter at the picnic. Yeah.
tell us about that.
Well, unpacking the boxes is different than the normal day-to-day operations of the sorter, where we're trying to direct books not just to our shelves, but to the Nampa branch and the Boise locations and everywhere else. So we are able to kind of change on the fly what the sorter is telling the books to do. And so unpacking the media boxes was a different sort table than unpacking the book boxes, and unpacking the tubs that came over from Cherry. Cherry's been holding on to all of our in-transit courier items for the past 3 weeks or
Yeah.
so. And so we like using the sorter to do some of that, like you said, turn off your brain work and let the sorter do it for you.
But the ones that came from Silverstone, we packed them in a certain way so that we could just pull them out quickly and get them on the shelf that we measured
Yes.
every inch of the shelves and
Yes.
we go. So it was a very quick reshelving process.
Nice. I had the privilege of attending a tour not too many weeks ago, but it was before the books arrived.
Mhm.
And there's just something about a library without books. It's like a body without blood in it, and so to see these pictures tonight and to think about the 30th is a happy.
Yeah, we're excited
happy
for everybody
thing.
to see it.
How are we going to get the word out? I know I've seen some emails already. I know it's on our webpage. Publicity.
Chamber. About opening or
Oh,
about the
opening,
ribbon
yeah,
cutting
the grand
event
opening.
specifically?
Well, both, I guess.
So to answer that, we have sent invitations to our partners. We're continuing to send those to our community partners to have them help spread the word. Social media, we've had a few different television interviews over the last 2 months. And then at the ribbon cutting, I know of at least one reporter who is very excited to attend and be there. She's already done a TV spot out at Pinnacle about a month ago, and she'll be there. And then when we did the early morning TV spot, we mentioned it as well when they came and hosted the weather segment out of the Orchard Park branch a few weeks ago. They were able to help get the word out. So trying to get it out there. We also have been promoting it internally on our digital displays and at Silverstone with the poster, and then just the big signs that are out at Pinnacle for anyone who's curious what the building is, and also when they've been doing those South Meridian markets, being able to promote it there as well. So.
And I'll add, it also has gone out to all of the Pinnacle community through their community newsletter. Lauren Brown, that is the lifestyles director for Brighton, I was in Leadership Meridian with. And so we've already got this relationship we've built where we're cross-promoting a lot of stuff.
Also, all the people who showed up at Silverstone after we closed,
And Pinnacle.
we let them know when they can come back.
Nice. Thank you both. This is a great news and look forward to the upcoming weeks. That brings us to revised agenda item number 5, and it's with some sadness. Excuse me, is this 6? 6, thank you. You're right. With some sadness, but also with some appreciation, we like to recognize and thank, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, Megan Larson, for many long years, 10 years in fact, as including, I believe, 8 years as board chair.
10.
10 years as trustee. How many?
10 years as
8 years as chair.
Okay.
Okay. A long time.
There was a lot.
Yes. And unfortunately, I'm sad to report that Megan has moved outside of the district, which necessitates her resignation from the Board of Trustees. However, her legacy and her work and efforts will remain here for many years to come. We have a plaque of appreciation we'd like to present to Megan tonight. It says, presented in grateful appreciation to Megan Larson, outstanding dedicated service as a member of as a member and chair of the Meridian Library District Board of Trustees 2014 to 2024. So
Excuse me just a second. Okay. So not so long ago, Dagmar Larson was here from MSR, and she was talking about the design of the facilities and how when you walk in, you should feel that you belong here and that they're like the Meridian Library in Meridian. Sorry. You don't need to pay an admission fee. You don't need to subscribe to a certain ideology. You are welcome here and you belong here. And it just really stuck with me for the physical spaces that she was talking about, but for the library's vision and commitment of this team to serve this community. You belong here. These physical spaces are wonderful and beautiful, but the pride that I feel in the spaces that we've constructed in my 10 years Unbound twice, Orchard Park, Pinnacle, Tiny, is because I know what it took to get there, and how this board did not quit on that vision of serving this whole community. And I saw that vision come through, not in these big ribbon cuttings, but in dozens and dozens of small decisions that were made every day by the staff, by the board. And I think about one of the first things that happened when I got here was we added the Sprinter, and that allowed us to serve assisted living facilities. And I've talked with staff about how the residents of those facilities felt when they were visited by the library. We have teens that come here that don't have a place to go after school that is safe from kids that don't fit in. And they come here and they feel comfortable. And staff could tell you that they're hard to work with sometimes, and they're a challenge. And this library did not push them out, did not lock them away. We built a space for them. We took away overdue fines, small thing. There's a barrier for people coming to the library, and we took that away to remove those barriers. Talked about Unbound. We had a couple of blocks over from where it is now, on the vision of our now director and a board that was willing to take a chance on that and make it happen. And now people tell me about going there and they're just in awe and wonder from what that place is. You guys talked about a tiny library at the Hillsdale campus, kind of planting our flag there, and little kids go in there and it's kid size because you can touch it wall to wall, but letting them know they're welcome. COVID was awful for lots of reasons, but home delivery came out of that. And now we can reach people that can't come here and let them know that they're not forgotten. So I've said it a lot of times, but somebody stood right here and told me that what I did at the library would follow me forever. And all I can say is that I hope so. When I was visiting another library just recently, there was a quote on the wall and it said, "When my brothers try to draw a circle to exclude me, I'm sorry, I shall draw a larger circle to include them." And there's nothing more library than that. So I thank all of you so much. It's true for all of you too.
This was actually on the agenda as a part of the agenda. The recognition of service was one of the agenda items.
Let's just leave it at that for now. Thank you. Thank you, Meg. Even though you may not formally continue to hold a formal position here, you're always welcome. And we hope you will always feel comfortable providing input to us and as a group. Thank you. So with that comes the next item on our agenda. In accordance with Idaho Statute 33-27163, we have to formally declare a vacancy on the Board of Trustees of the Meridian Library District. We have 60 days to fill this position. The position will be filled by a decision of the board, and we will be posting shortly on our webpage means for interested parties in the district to submit their names for consideration for that position. The seat will be appointed to serve between now and May of next year when the next election comes into play, and the seat will be open at that time. Did I get that correct? Okay. Thank you. Up next on our agenda is item number 8, the director's updates and the director's monthly report. Nick.
All right, thank you. I will try and keep it a little brief. So as we prepare to open Pinnacle in 12 days, the HR team has been hiring staff for that because, as you saw, Pinnacle is more than twice the size that Silverstone was. We need a few more staff, not too many, but a couple more staff, particularly with putting the items away, considering that the club grew by 51%. They need more staff to make sure that we get the items onto the shelves. So the HR team has been working to get those positions filled, and we still have one or two that we need to fill in the next few weeks. The foundation received a grant from First Federal Foundation to install a chime wall for the outdoor children's patio at Pinnacle. And we are always thankful for the work that our foundation does in getting little projects completed at our branches. The collection, as they were talking about, they've been very busy, and not only in adding and removing items, but our staff at the front desks have been very busy in checking out and then getting the items checked back in. We've created over 7,000 cards in this fiscal year, and we are well over 1 million checkouts in fiscal year 24. Computer usage, pretty standard. We, as I think I said last month, those numbers for August started going up because of the after school numbers, and so if you poke your head out there before the meeting, you saw that the computer lab was still decently busy a little bit before 7, which in the summertime is not usually true. You see like maybe 1 or 2. When I came in, there was at least 8 or 9 people out there using the computers. So some of the things happening at our branches, we have some things up there, but I just wanted to call attention to the efforts of our branches for the back to school programs that they did. Birds of Prey visited the Orchard Park branch. They also donated a lot of free passes for the summer reading program. And so it's a great opportunity for our community to learn about the activities at the Birds of Prey and also be able to go out there as well. We continued to go fair for the STEM Day. That's something we've done now for, my goodness, I want to say going on 8 or 9 years at least. And it's a great opportunity for us to participate with other library area, but also other organizations to promote STEM and to be at the Western Idaho Fair. And then MSR Design came and did listening tours for the remodel of Cherry Lane, and we are going to be doing a few more of those in the coming weeks, and that process is well on its way to getting us ready to do the renovation and remodel of Cherry Lane in 2025. And then last one I want to call attention to, Business Builder Day. It used to be in Meridian. It was in Garden City this year. It's a great event that we've been attending before Unbound was even a branch, and it allows us to connect with a lot of the different businesses, especially businesses that serve businesses within our community, not just Meridian, but the greater Treasure Valley as well. Lots of programs. We on the next slide we'll break it down, but we had over 100 programs in August, and that is not that many programs on face value, but we also took a program break for the second half of August as we got ready to close Silverstone. We were in a period of touch and go of what we needed to do. And so we had to make a decision prior to August, essentially, of when we were going to not have programs, because we didn't know exactly when we were going to be moving. So we had a program break planned, but even with that program break, we still had over 100 programs and almost 3,000 people that attended those programs. So this breaks down a little bit more. So every quarter, we try and give a little bit more in-depth look at some of the statistics or bring in statistics that we don't show every month. And this breaks down our programs by age. And you can see some of those numbers of where we're at, especially with the green on this right side, looking at how much we've increased. And the red number, again, is some of that is as we closed Silverstone. That was a place that took a bigger hit from not having a few extra programs, because when Paige does a story time, she normally has like 50 kids at her story time. So those missing a story time here or there can add up from our numbers quite easily. So it's great seeing the work that our librarians and associate librarians do in planning and executing on those programs. More with the attendance, greens all the way through. We're seeing a lot of participation in our programs across the district, but not only within our branches, but out in the community when we do the programs there as well. I'm very proud of our staff understanding and really grasping or taking hold of the fact that we can all do outreach and that our library services don't stop at our walls, that our library services extend throughout our community and we go where we're needed. And so it's really great to see that our numbers continue to go up, but it's not just in-house numbers. These are programs that we host outside of the library branches themselves. Another in-depth one that we're going to look at today is summer reading volunteers. This is something that we hadn't had for a few years following COVID. And so I was very excited for our team to be able to bring this back. We had 30 teen volunteers that staffed the summer reading prize desks at our branches. And on here with the pie chart, you see where they were at and the hours that they put in. And so they put in over 1,000 hours. And it was great. I loved coming in and seeing the teen volunteers sitting at the desk. And when we get to one of the quotes later, I'll explain a little bit more as to why. But it wasn't just to have them sit and do something for them. It also took a lot of pressure off of staff of handing out those prizes and being able to further what we do as a library district. And so anytime we can do that, it's a win across the board for everybody. And this is slightly different than the one I looked at earlier, so I'm gonna take a look at this. This was sorry, we changed slides at the last minute here, but this is unique volunteers. So looking at this, we actually had a lot of different people coming in to volunteer. It wasn't just 2 or 3 kids total. You know, we had lots of different teens coming in to help us throughout the summer. So I won't read all of these. Needless to say, they enjoyed doing the volunteer work, and they were very appreciative of our staff taking the time to make sure that they felt welcome and working with them to meet their unique needs throughout the summer. So I wanted to read the middle one. This is, we're almost at 8 o'clock, so I won't read all 3 of these, but the middle one, I started volunteering here to gain connections in MLD because I hope I can get a job here one day. Volunteering for the summer reading program has helped solidify in my brain that MLD is the library that I want to work for. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is, for me, this is one of the key pieces of why I was so happy we were able to bring this back. I got started 20 some odd years ago. I don't even want to try and think about how many, probably close to 30 now, as a summer reading volunteer. I spent a few summers being a summer reading volunteer at my public library, and then got a phone call from the librarian asking if I would come work for them. And I was only 14, but I started working for them way back when. And that has stuck with me for all these years. And it's so important for me that we provide these opportunities for our teens, not only because selfishly I want to give opportunities for people who want to someday work at our library, but just great experience for have the opportunity to get that volunteer experience. It's good on college resumes. It's good for getting your first job. And it builds a lot of the job skills that until you get you can't learn it until you go through it. You can't know the things like how to show up on time in a classroom setting. You have to go and work or go and volunteer. And I'm so proud of the team for making sure that we have those opportunities for the youth of our community. Number of volunteers per branch. So we had quite a few, kind of goes with how big the branch is, essentially. So not that big a surprise. The Unbound ones, this is not only the summer reading program. This is also including, I believe, the volunteer hours of training on the laser cutter and CNC machine and things like that. And yep, finishing out with a few photos. I did want to touch on a couple of things that came up during the Pinnacle piece that I just wanted to circle back on. So we broke ground on October 19th of last year at Pinnacle, and we will be doing our grand opening at 9 a.m. on September 30th. So less than 1 year from breaking ground, we are opening an 11,700 and some odd square foot building to the public, and it's all set, ready to go. This team did an amazing job of being ready to move quickly. They took all of the material from Silverstone and had it delivered, and everything was 4 o'clock on Friday. And I was so impressed that held in storage. They said they're almost what I think Dusty said, 95% ready to set up, and they'll get there easily by we hit the 30th. We're not expecting everything to be perfect, but it's going to be pretty dang close based on how hard they've worked. So again, wanted to say kudos to both Dusty and Jenny and their respective teams. So.
Great, thank you, Nick. Further questions or comments from the trustees?
I had a conversation with somebody within the last 3 months, and the question was, how are libraries relevant? It was a shocker question to me, but it made sense given this person's demographic and experience with libraries. And I just want to point out that the programs you've highlighted, Nick, and that our staff have been able to produce and maintain and grow. Homeownership fairs, office hours for the Idaho Department of Labor, the back to school with MASH. Those are just such a tiny portion of everything that happens. I can't think of any other example of how Meridian Library District is relevant to our community than what you just shared with us. So thank you.
Nick, I noticed there was a significant increase in the number of programs and participants in the adult and seniors. Was that a deliberate emphasis this year, or did it just happen coincidentally, or is there any thinking behind that, I guess is my question.
Trying to think of the
178%
yes,
increase.
yes to both.
Okay.
Intentional to a degree, but also kind of, I've done programs for most of my library career, and it's a crapshoot.
Okay.
You could have the best program on paper, and if you didn't get it marketed the right way, might not have anybody show up. And then you have a program about compost, and 60 people show up, and you didn't expect it. So it's kind of, it's a much harder gamble on
For the adult.
on the adults. It's a much bigger swing. Story time, you know that you're going to fill a story time. With an adult program, it's a lot harder. So kudos to the team for the unique wants and needs of the business community. That has been a big piece of some of the growth in our adult programs. But across the board, getting the community librarians at each branch and having staff talk with each other. They meet at least once a month to talk about programs across the district. And I think that is having an impact. But to say that we purposely targeted to do that, probably not explicitly, but also kind of.
Thank you. Up next on our agenda is item number 9. We have 3 job description revisions to consider tonight. Let's talk about them together, one by one, but then we will do an action item individually for each of those approvals, if that's okay.
So the first one is our system administrator. That is IT, essentially. And there were more edits on here than we felt comfortable going into consent agenda, but overall, nothing major with that one. Just a lot of cleanup pieces. With the executive assistant, that one is a much bigger change. And that is taking it from executive assistant to executive manager and moving additional people underneath the executive manager to create the district resources department. And that's a reallocation of staff that we currently have. So it's looking at our staffing model to be as adaptive to what our current situation is. And then the admin assistants, adding in some of the financial aspects of it, and then being able to assign admin assistant to the accounting and finance manager, which we're already doing, but we can now, with this change, be able to do some additional things that with our current job description, we're not comfortable with until we make some of these changes. And so, again, trying to update as we do every year with all job descriptions, but looking at where is our current staffing model and how do we make sure that we are properly addressing our needs as they are today and as we in there. Let me pull them up. Give me just a second. I'm gonna have Dan help me with this really quick because he's the pro at this. While we do that, do you want to go ahead and do the system administrator?
Sure, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would entertain a motion for the systems administrator position.
I move that we approve the systems administrator position.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that one is approved. And I see them now. Okay.
Those are now in the folder.
So again, oh, excuse me. never mind.
So for the executive assistant, the major changes in there are changing from executive assistant to executive manager, and then cleaning up who will be reporting to the executive assistant, which will include the admin assistants, the marketing librarian, and then any future changes to resource department that the executive manager will oversee. Otherwise, it's largely unchanged from the executive assistant. It's a not too much change from the structure of the job itself, but more in who that position oversees.
So this financial section on line 22, is that an addition or is that just,
That is an addition.
Okay.
So we had written a job description that never got sent forward to the, or it might have been taken forward to the board. It predated me, but we'd never hired that position, and it was going to be like a 12-hour financial assistant or something like that. So we took some of that language and added it into the admin assistant, so that it's one job title, but we can have different aspects of that position as we go forward, depending on what department they need to be assigned to.
a minute to let me know when you're comfortable with what you see.
And I was wrong. I'm sorry. We did have the finance assistant for a couple of months, I guess. It was not for,
recently, right?
no, it was 4 or 5 years ago.
Go ahead, Laura.
Mr. Chair. For the administrative manager job description, I see that there's still, like, the title is still labeled assistant as opposed to, I'm looking at the red line draft as opposed to manager, and maybe that's different on the, yeah. It's not, I honestly, I would just like a little bit more time to read it and digest it before I vote on this.
Justin, any questions, comments? Are we okay if we just? Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Yes, you'd need a motion to table it. So you have
And
three.
is there-
You have
is there a
three
drawback
choices.
if we wait till next month.
Yes, and because we had anticipate all of these changes taking place for who they report to and whatnot starting October 1st. It's not the end of the world, so it doesn't hurt us to wait. It just modifies the plan.
Could we move it to the bottom of the agenda so I can look at it a little bit longer? Is that a possibility?
I would say if we're not comfortable with it, I would be okay with having you table it, and we can do it in October.
Let's see who else has it.
I got nods from staff saying that that's sufficient.
Well, I'd like to move to table this until next month.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table items B and C, the job descriptions for executive assistant and administrative assistant. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was it for both?
I would like both, yes.
Okay.
And Destiny, your second is okay for both?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Let me. Staff, does that have a major impact for the admin assistant? The executive manager, I'm not as concerned. It was more the admin assistant. I believe that I'm a little more hesitant to say it's okay to table.
Can I take my motion back? Is that, or
You haven't. Yeah,
Right.
you could have a competing motion at this point. So if you wanted to.
I was confusing the executive assistant and the administrative assistant. So, sorry, I just figured that out.
So
That's why I was
does that mean we're okay
confused.
on both of those positions to proceed? Or
I'm okay. Yes, yes.
and Destiny, you're okay. So how do we need to withdraw? No action has been taken on the
Okay.
tabling, so we're okay there. So we could have a
Substitute motion?
substitute motion or the true motion.
We're gonna take the motions one by one though, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes. Sorry.
for positions. That we approve the executive manager job description.
Even though it's listed.
Yeah, that's why
this
I'm
is the confusion.
confused.
It's listed here. as
Correct.
executive
So
assistant
it's going from executive assistant to executive manager.
Okay, thank you.
But as it is,
As of this moment, it is
So-
assistant.
And
Assistant, okay.
so on to approve the executive assistant moving to executive manager.
Thanks for that.
Okay. Any
Mr.
further
Chair?
question on C? Destiny, go ahead.
I move to approve the administrative assistant job description.
Thank you.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the administrative assistant job position. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Gets complicated. Yeah. Next up, for item number 10 on the agenda are 3 policy reviews and action items to approve modified language for those 3 policies: the room reservation policy, the code of conduct policy, and the lending guidelines policy. More involved in the job description, so let's take each one at a time and do an action item at the end of each one.
All right. So all of these are routine reviews as we do each of our job descriptions, each of our policies each year. The code of conduct, I'll talk about here in a second, but room reservations, largely updating information as we go, as we add in rooms for reservation at Pinnacle that did not exist before, and clarifying the pricing structure so that it's easier to understand, while maintaining the back end flexibility that is needed for our systems. Largely changing, instead of having it listed at 15-minute increments from a price standpoint, listing it at the hour rate, but explaining that we will be charging at the 15-minute mark. So if a person is using one of the rooms for an hour, that's free. But if they go over, every 15 minutes is charged thereafter, but listing it as an hour rate because it's a little easier to understand conceptually when looking at it that way. And then, like I said, adding in Pinnacle. Lending guidelines, just kind of doing a routine review and update of that. There's a few minor changes, but nothing substantial in there. And then the code of conduct, you saw a lot of red, and that is because we had this one looked at by legal, and they rewrote all of it, even though there wasn't substantial changes. It is completely written by our legal counsel, and so everything that is in there is not only approved by legal but written by legal. And we had them look at the corresponding pieces that you had asked for over the last several months. We gave them all of the notes and had them look at everything through their purview of the law and with Idaho statute. And so that is their recommendation on what and how to update the code of conduct policy.
Let's go back. So the room reservation policy, I've got a question there. Relatively minor question. So I noticed the note about, where is it here? Line 46 and 47, priority will be given to reservations of the privacy pods for telehealth appointments. Do we have those privacy pods? That's still in the future.
They are on their way.
Okay.
So we got a grant for those, but they were supposed to be delivered in July, but because of delays in manufacturing and delivery and lots of other things that I'm not entirely sure on, we're still waiting. And so those are not things that we had purchased. Those are things that we had received as part of a grant. And so we wanted to make sure that we had the policy so that when they show up, we're not scrambling to have a way to adjudicate how those are used.
Thank you. That was my assumption. Okay.
That was my question too.
Any further questions on the room reservation policy? Okay. If not, I would entertain a motion for that one.
I move to approve the room reservation policy.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries for the room reservation policy change. So next is the, let's go to the lending guidelines policy, if that's okay. C first. Any questions on that one? That one's fairly straightforward.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Destiny.
I move to approve the lending guidelines policy as written.
A second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And then the code of conduct. So as you mentioned, Nick, this one has been reviewed and most of the revisions are under the direction of our legal team. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so I just, as a note for something that did come up tonight earlier in the meeting, let's take a look at, trying to find it here.
It's 90,
94, section 22, or item number 22. Let me just read that if it's okay. So the revision would read this way: the possession of weapons of any type on district property is prohibited unless expressly permitted by law, including without limitation, Chapter 33, Title 18 Idaho Code. For the avoidance of doubt, nothing herein shall be deemed to regulate firearms or any element relating to firearms and components thereof, including ammunition and knives or knife-making components beyond the limitations of Idaho law. Any other questions or comments on that item or any other portion of this new policy?
Mr. Chair.
Destiny, go ahead.
In regard to that piece, I just want to clarify that the Constitution does protect folks' ability to carry firearms or not certain knives from consequences from the government, but those folks from consequences from their fellow community members, which I would suggest might include disapproval or disappointment in folks that choose to bring firearms and knives into a place like a library where everybody should feel welcome and where there is no reason to bring those items. And so while they can expect the government not to impose restrictions on those items due to the Constitution, they cannot and should not expect their fellow community members not to have an opinion or for them not to have social consequences of doing so.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I have a comment.
Laura?
I understand what Trustee Hart is saying. I am also an Idaho gal. When I was 12, I got a curling iron and a 22. So I do understand the concern, and given our situation in our country right now, it is very, I think, normal for people to have concerns. And I appreciate the changes here to indicate that that nothing is deemed to regulate firearms. I think that's really important. That's a clarification that helps our staff understand our community values. But I also agree with what Trustee Hart is saying in that we can't control how people respond to others who choose to carry a firearm, whether it is concealed or open. And I appreciate the legal clarification.
Thank you. Nick, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we have looked at this for a long time. This is not the first legal opinion that we've had on this. This is the second legal counsel that we've had review this. And with this update, we have every policy looked at, but in particular with this one, make sure that they had enough time to not only review this, but to put in their own language regarding this so that this isn't coming from staff. This is directly with legal understanding and legal backing of what is appropriate to have. Not having it in here at all would be a disservice to setting what is expected of staff and the public. And so we need to have something that references Idaho code. And in doing so, this is hopefully as clear as we can get on making sure that everyone is on the same page.
Do you get the sense, Nick, that this is explainable to staff,
Yes.
and will it satisfy any concerns that they may have? I guess maybe that's a kind of goes back to individuals' opinions on the issue.
I would say that this is explainable to staff. On the second part, that is an individual matter that I don't know could be achieved with a policy.
Further questions?
Mr. President or Mr. Chair.
Yes. Yes.
But to be clear, if a fellow patron takes issue, they are absolutely free to do so as long as in taking issue, they are not violating the code of conduct. And library staff will not be expected to intervene. Library staff will only stick to their responsibility to not be the governmental entity that is regulating that possession and following the policy, but it is the patron's responsibility to understand that there are social consequences to all sorts of things, and that the library is not going to protect them from experiencing those social consequences should they decide to bring a firearm or a gun into a place where there are children.
I would say that our staff will be trained to treat an disagreement between patrons, regardless of what that argument is about, in the same manner. So regardless of if it is in regards to a firearm or who got the DVD first, or whose Minecraft account they're going to play on today. Disagreements between patrons will be handled with as much grace um, and reliance on the following the code of conduct as humanly possible.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
I move that we approve the code of conduct.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. When does this take effect?
All policies by the definition of the bylaws that we updated this year for the board in June. All policies, unless expressly stated otherwise, take effect the first of the month following the board meeting. So in this case, it will be October 1st, in which all of these policies go into place. That allows us time to educate staff on what they are and to get them properly posted in their respective places.
Thank you. Up next, item number 11 on the agenda, the salary schedule. We will consider some things here. This was included in our packet, and I would note also for the public and others that are listening in that we did have a board workshop, a publicly notified and available public meeting where we did discuss some of these issues in great detail. We had a lot of information provided by different staff members for this subject, some of which will be reviewed again tonight, but I just want to make it clear that this is not something that, no matter how long the discussion takes tonight, there was previous information provided for the board to make the best decisions on this area.
And during the workshop, there was no action items. There was no
Correct,
decisions made. Informative workshop, and thus the action item is before you tonight to
Correct.
be able to act on that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, Nick.
And in your packet, there were two different versions. One had grade level or pay grade 11 and one had pay grade 12. So in your motion tonight, I would just ask that you indicate which version you want us to move forward with, because in the feedback that was given during the workshop, you wanted to be able to see both iterations. And so we also left on there the breakdown for our, to show the pay grade 1 with 19 hours, pay grade 1 with 29 hours, and then pay grade 2, which is our library assistant pay grade, having it broken down in the 19-hour slot, 29-hour slot, and full-time, so that it's easy to see the minimum, midpoint, and maximum for the 3 levels of LA library assistant and the 2 levels of pages that we currently have, so that it is easier for you all to see, but also for current and future staff to see what that means.
Thank you, Nick. If you would you take just a minute or two and kind of explain some of the high level
Yes.
reasonings behind this? Anything else that you may have prepared?
Yep. So we have been looking at this for a very long time. We have reviewed salary scales from multiple libraries across the state of Idaho, and also looked at making sure that the non-library specific positions align. So one of those being the admin assistant, and making sure that we are in line with what other government agencies. And so we looked at what that looks like for the state, looked at what other municipalities are doing with that level of position. And so having that be in line with the appropriate pay grade. So going from pay grade 3 to pay grade 5 for the admin assistant. And then making sure that there's consistency with how we have the pay grade set up. Currently, the structure of going from pay grade 1 to pay grade 12, or from pay grade 1 to pay grade 2, is inconsistent with how the other pay grades go from 2 to 3 to 3 to 4. And there wasn't a lot of, I guess consistency is the best word, but methodology. And so just as we did previously, where we had updated the salary schedule to have the consistency and methodology of going from minimum to maximum for all of the pay grades. Now we're looking at how do we look at the consistency and methodology of going from pay grade 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and so on, so that we have consistency with our budget planning, we have predictability, and we have adaptability with moving forward, and also trying to be more in line with other employers. We can't compete with the private market, but we also are $3 or $4 below starting wages for some of those positions. So while we can't get all the way there, we do want to be mindful of making sure that we address staff pay as commensurate with their work and with where we're at as a community from a pay standpoint. And so looking at all those things, we hadn't done a pay scale increase in 3 years, I believe. And so this is taking a look at it and making sure that we don't have to do large swings and making it so that as we go forward, it's a bit easier to make adjustments whole scale for the whole pay grade without getting those inconsistencies between pay grades. And so being purposeful in our methodology.
In our earlier discussions, so the links administrator in the version that has a version level 12 is on there, but as we had talked about earlier, the links administrator, while it may officially be an MLD position, control over its salary is out, or the library is only one member of the group that would decide that position. And so
Correct.
it's where I'm going with this is, it doesn't matter to us, the links administrator position we can disregard for the purposes of this.
Correct. It is there currently because it needs to be on a pay grade level of some sort and for
Yes.
reporting purposes. But in terms of how the pay is adjudicated, again, we are one of 11 members of the links consortium, and as such don't set what that is.
Okay.
Solely, I should say.
Questions, comments?
Question?
Please.
So Nick, if we are not setting solely what the pay is for that links administrator, are the folks who are setting that salary, do they know about the links administrator being on this salary schedule, and do they agree with sort of where the salary is set for that, or the range?
So we've kind of gone backward. So that has been set by the links. We've just brought it back in it to make it fit with what we have
Okay.
and not the other way around.
Gotcha.
So that I believe it was last month that we moved it from pay grade 11 to 12 based on what the actions of the links consortium had been. But in showing the two different versions of the pay grade or the pay scale, one with 11 being the bottom and one with 12 being the bottom, that was just to try and show the two different versions that you had requested. So
Speaking for myself, I think I'm as I read our guidelines as a board of trustees, I believe that the director position and its paid salary is clearly and explicitly up to the direction of the board. And so for that reason, I'm more comfortable, or I am comfortable leaving 12 off entirely because of that. That doesn't mean that we still can't use guidelines such as this to decide the compensation for the director, but I don't think that it should be part of this schedule because it's different in its oversight and also its place in the organization from the other positions.
Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead.
I agree because although I don't think we're not far apart on this now, if we were to institutionalize that, it would really limit future boards with future directors. So I agree that maybe just our 11 pay grade model is our best option. And I do want to say I appreciate particularly this salary schedule because it gives folks sort of transparency into a career path. As a government employee, I sure do appreciate seeing what the specific skills are that are going to get me to that next pay grade so that I have something to shoot for and I have something to address during my performance evaluations to make the case for promotion later. And I think that this gives folks that tool to really advocate for themselves. And it just gives the public and our staff a lot of transparency, which I appreciate.
Please, Laura.
Mr. Chair, I also agree with your reasoning and Trustee Hart's reasoning. I do appreciate the transparency, and I also like the idea of not piecemealing things as we go through and having a consistent system, because budgeting, this can create an issue for budgeting when we have minor changes or changes to just one position or a couple versus the whole system. So this is, I like this approach.
This is I think that the terminology that we've tried to use throughout this is a one-time standardization of the salary schedule to make it so that we do have that consistency going forward and that predictability of how to.
And I believe too that this puts us in a better position in the years ahead, not only to follow the structure, but also to make incremental adjustments as necessary in a more methodical or understandable pattern than has been used in the past. Is that
Correct? Yeah. Currently, when we have such large gaps between pay grades, but also inconsistent gaps between pay grades, doing a 3% cost of living adjustment, or if a future board was to do that, would have very different impacts on where those are, and it can make those spreads different. And then there is that there is not that incentive to move up from a pay grade 2 to a pay grade 3 if they're more or less flat. So just trying to make it so that we're clear and transparent with make it easy for everybody to understand where we're at.
Thank you. The challenge with something like this in a meeting in this type of a setting is we have a very complicated spreadsheet before us here, or at least complicated with a lot of numbers on it here. And I would like to just point out for the record, the staff of the district, multiple groups for many months have been working through some of these issues. The director has brought some of these things to me for the past several months. We didn't, and then had that board workshop that we alluded to earlier that lasted a couple hours. So there's been quite a bit of time and energy spent on understanding this and getting comfortable with these numbers. And as it stands tonight, we've got a proposal before us that is very well organized, but at the same time, a lot of different numbers here. So it's hard to present all of that in a public setting such as this, but it's there.
And this goes onto our website
Right.
once it's published. If approved, it will take effect at the beginning of October, which is the beginning of our fiscal year, and it would begin at the first pay period, full pay period of the month, which starts October 3rd, going through. I should probably have the final date, but staff wouldn't see that increase until November.
And I would also point out that the monies here are already budgeted in the approved budget that we approved last month.
Correct.
Thank you. Further questions or comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
I would say that, this is going to result in a pay bump for some library staff. And I, as a taxpayer, I think that's a very wise use of taxpayer funding, because what we know is that it takes a lot more money to handle the turnover than it does just to pay folks what they're worth and keep them in that, retain the institutional knowledge, and not have to go out and recruit and hire and do the training process. And so I think this is a really savvy use of our salary budget. And I think the transparency is going to be really appreciated by taxpayers as well. And that would be an expectation I have as a taxpayer, is that governmental entities would really be transparent with their salaries and ensure that they're fair and use some sort of logical formula to arrive at numbers rather than, I think what we see in some other industries. So I appreciate the work that was done on this, and I appreciate the attention to having that workshop for us to just help us understand, because we're not all numbers people and we're not all HR people. And so having the ability to really talk through that so that we can make sure that we're making an informed decision is very much appreciated.
I would agree with that. If there are no other discussions or questions, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Please go ahead.
I move to approve the salary schedule
And
in version with 11 pay grades.
is that specific enough for the record? I would believe so.
Yes.
Do they have like option A, option B? Okay. The 11 grade salary schedule.
Thank you.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
we need to cure something from earlier on item 9B, when a motion was made and seconded. I didn't hear the second. And so we do need to cure that so that we are in full compliance moving forward. So just need to acknowledge that a motion was made and seconded without a vote, and then move to reconsider the vote that was made, and make an amended motion for that. So that was a lot of words to say. We need to go back and redo that.
Thank you for catching that. So back to item 9B, the executive assistant position. I would entertain a motion.
Move to reconsider the vote.
Reconsider the vote for item 9B, the executive manager position description.
To make an amended motion to withdraw the initial. Here, I can say it and you can say so moved. How's that?
Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
So it will be to move to reconsider the vote on the executive assistant position, and amend the, to move to reconsider the vote on the executive assistant job description that was made to table the position, and amend the motion to approve the executive assistant job description, moving to the executive manager job description. You can't say that.
I can't say
So
this.
moved.
Thank you.
Second.
There you go.
We need Megan back here.
Wow.
Thank you.
Now we're going to vote on that.
Now we're ready to go on.
Now we're gonna vote.
Just the vote. Okay.
Just-
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries again. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks for keeping me honest. All right, we are now down to item number 12, future agenda items for our next meeting. I would like to hear some more about the Cherry Lane remodel, maybe the MSR listening committee, if there's anything to share. If there's not, that's fine. But
I
I would like to hear more about the privacy pods and how they operate and the background behind those and also their maintenance.
I can get you the first parts.
And I'm sure we'll have some of the regular policy reconsiderations that will come in according to the schedule.
Yep. As part of our routine review of policies and job descriptions, I believe, I think I saw that we had like roughly 5 of each. I'm saying that. Let me look. I can tell you. We are at 4 policies, well, 3 policies in a schedule for next month, and we are at 7 job descriptions. And a lot of the job descriptions that are coming are not necessarily on schedule, but it has a cascading effect on a few of them. So we have to do in conjunction with one another.
Thank you. If you have any other items, please bring them to my attention and we'll get them on the agenda. And that brings us to the end of our meeting tonight at 8:44. We are adjourned. Thank you.